In our last movie, we looked at some very basic stuff with arrays. How to initialize an array, and how to add an extra variable, and how to print out elements within that array. What if we wanted to find out the number of elements within an array? Now, it may be very obvious in this particular very simple script how many elements we're dealing with. It doesn't take a great leap of mathematics to add 4 to 1. However, as our scripts get more complicated, we may find that it's difficult to keep track, or even impossible, depending on the way in which our scripts are structured. So we may need to use a piece of Perl script to examine our array and see how many elements that it contains. What we can do is we can set a scalar variable, and we could call this numCreatures, or number of creatures, and we're going to simply set that to the number of elements within the creatures array. And we can do this very simply like this. We're setting the scalar variable, and we appear to be setting it to the same as what the array is set to. However, we can't set a scalar variable to be an array. That would break the meaning of the scalar versus the array data types. So what Perl does is it tries to convert something meaningful about the array into a scalar context. In this case, it's going to take the size of the array, or the number of elements. So if we now try and print the value of numCreatures, we go over to our command prompt to test that, we can see that it's able to pick up the number of creatures in the array by using that particular line of Perl script. Another thing we might want to do is to use this variable we've created to show, say, the second to last creature in the array. So to do that, we can use the creatures array, and we put a $sign before that to show we're referring to one element within it only. Then we can use square brackets around here, and we're going to say numCreatures minus 2. Let's take a look at our command prompt and see what that comes up with. It's the elephant. Now let's take a look back. Now, it may seem, since we've taken the total number of creatures and used that as the element that we're trying to access within the creatures array, that it should go back to the lion. The tiger's the last one, the elephant is the second last one, but if we take 2 away, we get to the lion. The reason why this is not happening is that the element that would exist if we were able to access the element numCreatures within the creatures array hasn't actually been created yet. That's because our array is 0 indexed. So imagine if we had an array with just one element, dog. The length of the array would be 1, but the element that we're able to access would be called 0. If we tried to access creatures 1, we wouldn't get a result. Let's see what happens if we try to access creatures and the element we're trying to get is the same number as the size of the array. If we go back to our script, we get nothing. That array element has not been set, so we don't get any output back. We're looking for an element that doesn't exist. So that's an important thing to remember, as well as it works at both ends of the array. As well as the first element being 0, the last element is always 1 less than the length of the array.